sight of God and in the presence of this company to witness the exchanging of vows between this couple. And when they leave here, they will become husband and wife for the very first time. Who gives this woman a way to be married to this man?
Her mother and I.
Just to break the tension, although it's a happy time, I don't know why there's tension. I used to be Julie's youth minister, and she sent me a text and said, "You promised to marry me." And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember that." Just those of you who don't know, I used to do a joke with the teenagers, and I would, well, not the guys, I would go to the girls and say, "Hey, can I marry you?" It was a joke because, you know what I mean by that. I performed it, but they didn't know what I mean by that. And I didn't do the joke too long after I met Julie. She wasn't the one, but there was a girl after that slapped me, and so I stopped. I didn't do that joke. But Julie knew exactly what I meant. "Yeah, you can marry me." I'm like, "You know what I meant?" She said, "Yeah, I know what you meant." I'm like, I never could pull one over on her. So I'm extremely honored and thankful that you've asked me to marry you. I'd love to. The Bible both begins and ends in the same way, with a wedding. In the book of Genesis, it's the wedding of Adam to Eve. In the book of Revelation, it's the wedding of Christ and the church. And since the Bible isn't man's invention, for it is God-breathed, that can only mean that marriage isn't man's invention, but it's God's idea. The Apostle Paul tells us about the purpose behind God's idea of marriage by explaining its symbolism and its correlation to our relationship with Jesus Christ. I would like to read for you from Ephesians chapter 5. "Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and himself its Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, also wives should submit to everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish." Like a coin, marriage has two sides. It has a painful side and a wonderful side. Just like the gospel has a hard side and a good side. The painful side of the gospel shows us that we are more sinful and flawed than we ever dared hope. We're also, on the good side, the gospel tells us we're more loved and accepted in Jesus Christ than we ever dared believe. And that's the same thing with marriage. It's that dual relationship with painful truth, yet wonderful news. That's the only kind of relationship that can truly transform us. God's saving love in Christ is marked by both radical truthfulness about who we are, yet at the same time radical unconditional commitment where we are. He accepts us and loves us, even sin and flaw, just as marriage should accept one another. A different way to say that is to say that the gospel can fill our hearts with love, and God's love in such a way that we can handle it when our spouse doesn't love us the way we think they should. And then we're free then to love them, even in their sin, for who they are, and still love and accept them just as Jesus accepted and accepts us. Which is why God said at the beginning that it is not good for man to be alone, just like it isn't good for the church to be alone. Both require the presence of another person. That person for the church was Jesus, and that person for you is each other. There's a secret to a successful marriage. Whether you're husband or wife, don't live for yourselves, but for the other. Marriage best works when the one you chooses Jesus first. More than you, with or without you, on their own, not because of you. Because to love anything or anyone more in this world than God is to crush the object of that worship under our expectations. No human can fulfill your needs the way only God can. So when God fills those needs, then you're free to love one another as God wants. Chris and Julie, to be in love with Jesus over and above each other makes it possible to understand a higher love that allows you to love others the way Jesus loves you. There's a familiar passage in 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter. But in that passage, it tells us what love is and what love is not. Love is patient, it is kind, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And then in the same passage, it tells us what love is not. Love is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs, and it does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. In short, what God is saying is that love is a choice, an intentional choice. What love is not, it's not an accident. You don't fall into love. You choose to love. And that's what you two have decided to do today. It's looking at each other and saying, I see everything about you, good and bad, and I still love you and will be committed to you always. Chris, Julie knowingly chooses you above all others. She chooses you to be her husband. So it is to your honor and privilege to know that God has chosen you to faithfully fulfill your responsibility to her as Christ fulfilled his role to his bride. Like Christ, your role is to be considerate, tender, faithful, loving husband, to support, guide, and cherish her in prosperity and trouble, to shelter her from danger, to cherish for her an undying affection, even as Christ died for his church, to die for her if need be. And remember, Julie is God's daughter first, your wife second. Julie, Chris deliberately chose you to be his wife above all others. So it is to your honor and privilege to know that God has chosen you above all others to love and love him alone. Your responsibility is to be considerate, tender, faithful, loving wife, to counsel, comfort, and cherish him in prosperity and trouble, to present yourself to his leadership, which is in God's sight an ornament of great price. Even as the church is subject to Christ, forsaking all others and cling to him with a love which never fails. Both of you walk down this aisle today, and you bring to this day many different values and beliefs that have been instilled from you, from your parents, from your friends, from your co-workers. Some of those you've adopted as your own, and some of those you've had discarded as irrelevant. Either way, may you begin your life on one basis alone, and that being God's Word. And I picked out a verse for you that I would hope would be your signature verse, and it's in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8, which says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Chris, thank you for this day and allowing me to be part of this. When I first met you, I walked away, I went home and I said a prayer. I said a prayer of thanksgiving, thanking God that you are an answer to prayer. What you don't know is many people have been praying for Julie all their life, for God to send someone into her life to love her and keep her, and you're that answer. And so I thank you for that. You have a gentle spirit about you. Apparently, when you decide to be, is what Julie says. And you have a fun-loving personality. And what I really appreciate about you is your loyalty to things and to people, and especially to Julie. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your life and to be part of your blessing here. And I pray that you will continue to be to Julie what Jesus is to you. Julie, we have a long history together. Fighting, loving, crying, praying. I want you to know how special and important you are to me. I've used your story time and time again to help encourage and inspire other people, whether it be teenagers or adults. And my prayer as you were growing up was that my own daughter would just get influence, some kind of influence from your example. I don't think she did. And my prayer for you now is that you be to Chris what Jesus is to you. Oh, and by the way, you knew this was going to happen. Julie and I have a contest. You're going to have to ask her what that contest is, but I'm just going to say, whichever of us wins, we both win in the end. If you are now ready to assume the obligations and duties before God as I have defined them, I want you to face each other, unite your hands, and pledge your love to one another, your lives together. Do you, Chris, standing in the presence of God and these witnesses solemnly pledge your chosen love to Julie? Do you promise to live with her according to God's ordinance in the holy state of matrimony? Do you promise to love her, comfort her, honor her, and keep her in sickness and in health, forsaking all others, keeping yourself only for her, and through God's grace you promise to be to her a faithful and devoted husband as long as you both shall live? Do you, Julie, standing in the presence of God and these witnesses, solemnly pledge your chosen love to Chris? Do you promise to love him according to God's ordinance in the holy state of matrimony? Do you promise to love him, comfort him, honor him, and keep him in sickness and health, forsaking all others, keeping yourself only for him? And through God's grace, promise to be to him a faithful and devoted wife as long as you both shall live? Are there tokens of your commitment? Chris, I'm going to ask you to go first. Place the ring on Julie's finger and repeat after me, please, while you are looking in her eyes. I, Chris, choose you, Julie.
I, Chris, choose you, Julie.
To be my wedded wife. To have and to hold. From this day forward. For better, for worse. For richer, for poorer. In sickness or in health. To love and to cherish. Till death do us part. With this ring, I pledge my life to you. Julie, I'm going to ask you to place the ring on Chris's finger and repeat after me while you look lovingly into his eyes. I, Julie, choose you, Chris.
I, Julie, choose you, Chris.
To be my wedded husband.
To be my wedded husband.
To have and to hold.
To have and to hold.
From this day forward.
From this day forward.
For better, for worse.
For better, for worse.
For richer, for poorer.
For richer and for poorer.
In sickness or in health.
In sickness and in health.
To love and to cherish.
To love and to cherish.
Till death do us part.
Till death do us part.
With this ring,
With this ring,
I pledge my life to you.
I pledge my life to you.
Chris and Julie, you are now sealed into a new relationship of oneness. You are not your own. You now belong to each other. Therefore, honor each other as yourself. As it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife. What therefore God has joined together, let no man put asunder. Let no one ever presume to come between the sorrows and joys that you share from this moment on. Let's pray. Father God, we ask that you bless this union, this covenant, this relationship between Chris and Julie that they've made before you and before us. Father, we ask that you bless their walk and their journey together. As Chris has stated to me, he's excited about beginning a new adventure, and he can't wait to begin it with the love of his life. And I ask that you give them wisdom in the choices that they need to make, to give them patience and dedication whenever they need, when the time gets down, the other side of the coin when it shows. Help them to work through trials and tribulations, and help them to rejoice exuberantly with the joys and gladness that come their way. Bless their steps, bless their journey, and help them always to be united with you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Inasmuch you, Chris, and you, Julie, have consented to live together in holy wedlock, and have expressed your commitment before God and this gathering, according to the laws of God and the laws of man, and by the laws of the state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. From this day forward, may you be one in mind, one in heart, and by the grace of God, one in eternal destiny. The Lord bless you and keep you and shine his face upon you. You may now kiss your bride. Turn to these slides, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I proudly present to you for the very first time, Mr. and Mrs. Chris Lyle.
Chris and Julie. And special guest, T-Rex.